Hi, I'm Melissa from Paint Party LI, and today we're going to be painting the Red Barn Snowy Fairy Lit Wine Bottle. All right, so we're going to get started by getting all our supplies out. I have mine on a plate. Yours are fine in the little cups that they came in. You'll need a cup of water to wash your brushes and a paper towel to wipe them off. Okay, you have your cork with your fairy lights, your wine bottle, paints, 2 paint brushes, and we're gonna get started. All right, so I'm gonna wet my big paintbrush a little bit, and what I'm gonna do is paint the whole bottom of the wine bottle, probably about 3 inches or so, with white paint. I'm just doing a nice thin coat as I slide it around here and turn it. I'm going to do a second coat, so I want to do it nice and thin to start, and when I do that second coat it has to be super dry, otherwise it won't stick on there nice and smooth. Okay, so about 3 inches or so. Again, I just dampened my brush. You don't want a whole lot of water in it when you paint on glass. Nice thin coat all the way around, smoothing it out. I'm going the same direction, just dragging it around, going all the way around one time, one thin coat. Okay, so now I'm just going around getting some of the thicker streaks out of there. Going all the way around with it. I'm going to actually do probably closer to 4 inches up the bottle. Just want it up a little bit higher with the snowy bottom of that. Okay, when you're done getting that in, it doesn't have to be totally straight across on top. When you're done getting that in, you're going to put that brush in the water. We're going to switch to the tiny brush. And what I'm going to do is start to draw in the Red Barn. Again, all of this will get a second coat. So I'm going to do just kind of a barn shape here. And I'm going to show you up close. Right, so I did one side of the roof a little bit longer, just so it wasn't completely symmetrical. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to fill that in with red paint. And again, it's going to be see-through, and that's okay. Totally fine, because we're going to do another coat on that. We might even do 3 coats with the red. Okay, so I'm just doing a nice thin coat of red to get started. And it's streaky, and you can see through it, and that's fine, because second time around, it'll be much easier to cover, much more opaque. So I'm cleaning off that brush, that skinny brush, and then I'm drying it off. I'm going to start doing the trees around the outside, around right at the top line of this white on both sides of that red barn. When I do that, I'm going to mix a little bit of white and green together. So again, yours are in cups, not on a plate. You can go ahead and grab one of the lids of your paint and just mix the tiniest bit in there. I'm just mixing a little bit of both. And I'm going to go through making a few trees different heights. When I do that, it's going to be a short brush stroke that curves, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to start with what looks like that shape right there, okay? And I'll do another brush stroke right down the middle. And then I'm going to do another tier underneath, just like that, until it hits the snow. Okay, so I'm going to do a bunch of those around, and then we'll add some more green, some more white, so it looks a little more snowy. Remember, this is just the first coat. You're going to do that same technique going around your bottle, and I'll show you again on the other side. Again, just doing that first little brush stroke on top. When you use your little brush, best idea is to hold it real close to the bristles down by the metal so you can have better control over it, and then don't press down very hard. You want to just drag it along gently. Okay, and now I'm going to do another tier, another layer underneath. Imagine it's like a cake with those different size tiers. They get a little bigger as they go down towards the bottom. Okay, and it's a very simple brush stroke of just brushing it out on a curve away from the middle. Okay, So those are my first two. Again, they'll get a second layer that'll start to look a little bit more thick, a little bit more opaque, and you can kind of play around with the color a little bit more. Right now I just have a little bit of a mixture of green and white, and the reason I put the white in there is so that it really kind of cuts some of it being so translucent. It will be kind of see-through and streaky the first time around, and that's fine. I'm just going to work some trees all the way around doing different heights. And you can leave a little space here and there. You can put some right up against each other. Okay, second coat again will be much more opaque. You really won't be able to see through that as much at all. Okay, so I'm going to do a few little ones, a few tall ones, starting with that same technique where I do the pointed top, working my way down. Okay, so just like that. Again, that's the first coat. Meanwhile, your white is drying, your red is drying. When you're done doing the first coat of the trees, we'll be able to go in and add another coat on that white, another coat on that red barn, working our way right back from where we started, doing a second coat. Okay, so I'm doing a few trees that go all the way around. Again, you don't have to have 1,000 of them. Do a few different heights, and then you're going to put that little brush in the water. I'm going to clean off and dry off that big brush just to make sure I didn't get any green paint on there. And make sure you want to dry it off too, because you really just want damp bristles. You don't want really wet bristles when you're painting on glass. Otherwise, when you go across with your second coat, it'll kind of lift it up. All right, so I'm taking some white paint, and now I'm going to do a second coat. If your white paint looks like it's still pretty wet, let it dry. Or if you brush across and the paint starts to lift up and crackle a little bit, let it dry before you go in there. It's important that you are really, really dry before you go in with your second coat. You can always take a hairdryer and kind of speed it along if you want to also. But what's great about the video is that you can pause it whenever you like and do it at your own pace, still seeing the technique. Okay, so again, I'm just going very thin coat of that white. That second coat is really all you'll need as you go around. And I'm just spreading it very gently. The thing you don't want to do when you're painting on glass is go back and forth and paint it a bunch of times. That starts to loosen it on the first coat. You don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm just going in there very thin, just like this, all the way around till I have a nice thin coating all the way across the snow. Okay, that's a lot less streaky. You really could do a third coat if you really wanted to, but it probably won't be necessary. Okay, so I'm going to clean off and dry off my brush. And when I go in for my coat of red paint next, I'm going to use my big brush. Even though I drew it in with that little one, I'm going to take some red paint and I'm just going to do another coat right across. Again, that second coat will really start to fill in and make it more opaque. So now I'm not seeing through that red barn as much. I might do another coat on there. I'm going to let it dry a little bit and see how it looks. And you can decide, 2 or 3 coats should do it though, and make sure they're nice and thin coats. Okay, cleaning off and drying off my tiny brush. I'm going to go back in to the trees, and you want to start with the one that you started with, so that's going to be the most dry. And again, if all of your trees are super wet, there's no rush. Let it dry a little bit more, 4 or 5 minutes. The paint dries pretty quickly. You can always blow dry if you want to speed it along. So I'm going to start with my first one, and I'm going to go through and add a second coat of that green and white mixture. Now when I do that, this is probably all of the coats I'm going to do on it. However, I'm going to go back and add a little snow here and there. So you'll see that one's a lot thicker. You can't really see through it as much. And I'm going to go around and do all of my trees like that. Okay, all the way across, going all the way around. On every tree. that second coat sits on there really nicely, and it's going to cover up a lot better. Okay, so I'm just kind of coming through, doing all of my little trees, and I'm going to overlap that last bit on the bottom there, right over the white, so it looks like it's sitting on there and not just floating. Okay, and that second coat, like I said, really covers so much better. Going through, doing a nice second coat on all of these. Okay, and it's just short little brush strokes as you go around. Okay, so now I'm actually going to take my green paint, go back in with some straight green, and just do a few little streaks here and there on each one of those little layers. And I'll show you up close. Just kind of streaking here and there. This way you can see the difference in the colors of paint. And then I'll go back in there and do the same with a little bit of white, maybe at the tips and at some of the edges of it, just so that it has a little bit of that broken up color here and there. All right, so again, I'm just kind of streaking in some dark here and there, giving it a little more detail, a little more shading and shadowing, so it's not so flat on there. All right, so I've done all my trees. It's just a couple of quick brush strokes here and there on each of the tiers of that tray. I'm going to clean off my tiny brush. I would like to do probably one more coat of red on that barn, but in the meantime, I'm going to take my black paint and I'm going to just go right along the roof line and do a black roof that comes off. So let's see, I'm just going right along the roof line. Again, when you use your tiny brush, you want to go very gently, don't press down very hard. Okay, so I've got that red. I'm going to put some snow up on top of that roof also. Before I do the windows and the door, I'm going to clean off my big brush. I'm going to add just one more coat of that red. And again, you want to wait till it's pretty dry. I'm almost there. Okay, that paint does dry pretty quickly. So I'm going to take a little bit more red paint and I'm just going to go across one more time with a nice clean dry brush so it's not adding a lot of water to it. Okay, so I have a nice solid coat now. With my red barn, I have a little black roof. And I'm going to take the white paint and now add some detail to the trees while that barn dries. This way I can go in and put the door and all the detail on that as well. Okay, so with my clean, dried, small brush, I have a little bit of white paint. And I'm going to come in here just at the top of these trees and give it a few little brush strokes. Do a little snowy top. And then here and there at the edges of that tree, it's going to get a little bit of white. Just a few little brush strokes, just so it looks like snow has collected here and there on the tree. So I'm going to do the tip of the tree and then just a few brush strokes towards the bottom. Just like that as I go around. I'm going to do that to all of the trees. They're all going to get just a little bit of snow with that little tiny brush. Again, best thing to do is don't press down. So I'm holding it real close like a pen or a pencil. And I'm brushing through. Just a little on top, right, as I go through. Just a little on top. And then a few brush strokes here and there on some of the edges of those little tiers that you did. Remember, when you're doing the tiers of the tree, this top one is pointy and smallest, and then as you get down towards the bottom, they'll get bigger and bigger. Okay, so I just added a little snow to my trees, just like that. And going to clean off and dry off my brush just to make sure I didn't get any green in there. I'm going to actually flip this brush around and use the stick of it now, and I'm going to do some dots of snow here and there in the sky, and you can even have them overlap some of the trees. But I'm just using the stick, and again, I'm doing this while the barn is drying. This way, when it dries, I can go in and put my door and my window in there. Okay, so I'm just using the stick to dot in, and if you want them bigger, you just kind of roll it a little bit. Dot it down and roll it a little bit so it gets that bigger dot in there. And you can really, as many or as few as you like in here. I'm going to kind of here and there in between some of the trees, on top of some of the trees. I'm going to overlap it a little bit so it looks like the little snowflakes coming down in front of the tree. Okay, so I have a little snowy scene there. I'm going to wipe the bottom of that off on my paper towel, and I'm going to go back to the bristles, which I already cleaned and dried off. So I'm going to use a little black paint now. And I'm going to put a nice big barn door right in the front. So I'm just going to make a little rectangle here. And then I'm going to fill that in with black paint. If your red is super wet, you can give it another minute or two to dry before you move on to that. Okay, so I'm doing a nice little door. I'm going to do a little window over here also. Okay, and then I'm going to clean off and dry off that brush, get all the black paint out of there. And the very last thing I'm going to do is add a little snow to the roof and then a few snow dots over the barn. So it looks like it's overlapping. So I'm taking my white paint now, and I'm just going to drag it along very gently here and there on top of this roof. So it looks like it has a little snow sitting on top of it. And then again, you can use the brush, or you can use the end of your brush, the stick, and put a few dots of snow going right down over the barn. If you want to get a little more creative even, you can take the stick with a little bit of red and do some either little berries or some little ornaments in your tree. Okay, you can work your way around doing all the little trees if you want to with some little red dots. I'm going to clean off and dry off that brush. I'm actually just going to stick it in the water and leave it to the side. And I'm going to start to get some of the other supplies ready for finishing the bottle. Okay, so I have my little barn scene, my little trees that go around with the snow at the bottom. Okay. In your kit, you should have a piece of string. All right, so I'm just gonna cut one here like you already have. This is the jute twine, so it's a nice rustic kind of look. What I'm gonna do is just wrap it around the neck of the bottle. So I'm gonna leave a piece out so I can tie it at the very end. And I'm just going to wrap it around until I don't have any more string. I just have to leave a little piece so I can tie it together. If you have a hot glue gun, you can use that, and you can just hot glue it on there instead of tying it. So that's up to you. I usually tie mine though anyway. Okay, so I'm wrapping it around kind of nice and tight to each other, close to each other, each layer, going all the way around with that string. I'm just going to move it down a little bit. Okay, again, just leaving the end of it so that you can tie it on. Okay, so I'm just tying a knot in the back, just like that, and then you can trim it, or you can make a bow, or however you like it. Okay, so I just wrapped it around and then tied it just like that. Last part here is going to be uncoiling these. So there's a little plastic piece that you pull out that activates the battery. So it'll turn it on and off. Now, first you want to unravel around that so they don't get all tangled as you try to unloop it. Okay, once you get that, you're just going to take these out and start to feed them into the bottle. And you can turn it on while you do that if you want to. And you're going to light up your little snowy barn scene here with these little fairy lights. Okay, as you're feeding them in, you're just pushing it down. It's okay if it's all kind of bent and raveled. You want it to be like that so that there are lights hitting all parts inside there. Okay, pushing all the way into there. Okay, I'm just going to keep pushing all the way down until I get all the lights fed in there. And if you have trouble with that, you can always use the end of your paintbrush and just kind of push them down. So if you make sure you dry that off really well, you can always take the stick and push them down in there if you're having a problem getting them in there. Okay, pushing them all the way down in there. And I am actually going to use that to get them so they're not so congested in that one little spot. There we go. Okay, pushing them all the way in to your bottle until you get a nice amount of lights everywhere in that bottle, and then pushing the cork right into the top. Okay, when you're done with that, you are completely done. So thanks for painting along with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. And there's your snowy barn scene with the fairy lights. Thanks so much.